Hello, my friends. This is Rick again. I just wanted to show you a little bit of some images and videos I took 10, 11 days ago on the previous Monday when we had a really nasty storm come through here with winds upwards of 90 mile an hour. They got worse as they went further east. They hit eastern Iowa and parts of Illinois with upwards of 130 mile an hour winds. Rare echo or something they called it. This line wind storm is not common in the Midwest. We get our share of our tornadoes and stuff, but this has been like a tornado a quarter the size of the state rolling through, or the class 1 to class 2 hurricane of sustained winds that lasted. The worst part lasted about 15 or 20 minutes as it passed through, but the winds prior to it and after it were still pretty gusty for a better part of an hour. And I was working in the office at the shop where I work at, and right there's the nose of the pumper truck that I drive, and you can see the trees that landed in our neighbor's yard. They clipped the edge of his house, but they missed doing any significant damage. They could have just as easily fallen backwards over all of our work trucks. Would have been a bad day for the company, a real bad day. And that tree branch is about 2.5 feet in diameter. Because I'm used to parking under it all the time. The tree itself, it has some rotting issues, carpenter ants or something going on up in there. We've had a branch fall off. No, we took a branch down 2 years ago because it was going to come down. It was already dead, but you can see in the core of that large branch there that came down. So half the tree basically is landing in his yard, and we were very fortunate. So, here goes on to my first video clip at my own home. My backyard up against the house. Tore up the eave just a hair, but nothing damaged to the wall or the roof. But you can see our furniture. That's a good sized limb. Fucking wind is still going. The rain slacked off. We got more trees patched back there. Stuff over here next to the house. Up front. I'm always worried about this tree right here because it's a bugger of a tree. That's a branch down right there, pretty good sized limb. I don't see no broken windows or nothing because it came out from that direction, and most of our trees and stuff. Yeah, there's a broke off up there. Some of these dead branches and stuff. The whole thing's littered with them. It's just they're so high up there, I just can't get down to them and clean them up. Our neighbor, I just came from where I work, and our neighbor had a good-sized tree go down. It missed hitting the company trucks in my van by a few feet. Well, it just knocked the cage off, but it ain't damaged it none. All good, nothing on the RV. Okay. Like I said, you can see some of the most significant damage at our house was this big dead branch that came down out of the tree behind us, behind the corner of the house, and took out our lawn and furniture. Just missed my new grill, thankfully, and it really didn't. It looks worse than it is. The chairs survived, and the dead wood was dry and brittle. It broke up pretty good. It just missed the kitchen window, so nothing got broke. Nobody got hurt. I'm glad and fortunate. I cleaned up the last weekend. I worked a big chunk of the weekend, but I had part of Saturday off, so my wife and I drug all those branches down. I cut up what I could with the big ones with chainsaw, and I have a pile the size, as tall as me, and I'm 6'2", and that pile is probably 8 feet in diameter. Now there's a nice big burn pile or ash pile down there where a burn pit is. So, we were very fortunate. Later that Monday, I went out on a job to a town that's about 20 miles northeast of Des Moines, and my experience was I passed a dozen trucks flipped over on I-35 north between Ankeny and Ames, I-35 that heads to Minnesota, and it wasn't until I got to about the 11th truck that I thought about turning my camera on and videotaping it, which typical of me. I'm too busy gawking at the landscape to think of the video opportunities that I missed out on. I should have been videotaping the storm was through the windows of the shop when it hit, instead of just watching the neighbor trees falling down. So typical. But the fact is that I saw miles of snapped telephone poles off when I got off the interstate, and went to go back on. The southbound lane was so crowded and so badly backed up, I got diverted, and I got diverted to another highway, which then got closed up because of down power lines, and ended up doing some jigging and driving around the back county highways between Ames and Des Moines to get home. And I went across one section where there was probably 40 or 50 telephone poles that had snapped off like toothpicks into the cornfields, and I saw some big corn bins and other things that just blown over, blown apart. A lot of farm equipment flipped on their sides. I found semi-trailers and trucks all over the place that had been flipped over. I'm guessing if they were empty and facing against the wind, they went over. And the power in some areas of the state, even today, 11 days later, they're still struggling to get power up to the eastern half of the state, and some pretty large cities are still significantly out of power out there. So it's like a storm like we've never seen before. And I'm beginning to wonder, we talk about global warming and all these things, and a lot of people out there think it's bogus, hoaxy bullshit. And I'm telling you, we're seeing some strange shit this year, just between the pandemic and our government being unable to function right like it's supposed to or like it should, and the weather, look at the fires out west. They're just horrific. And, Australia had a huge, horrific fire earlier in the spring. Now we've got a pair of hurricanes barreling down on the Texas, Louisiana area of the country. I've heard of them, one or two in the Gulf, but never both of them like shotgun barrels coming at you both at the same time, side by side. It's just very strange. This derecho, or whatever it is they call it, was hurricane equivalent winds. I have seen some pretty heavy stuff in my lifetime, but nothing like that. And in fact, locally and personally, we came out of it pretty good. We had no power for 3 days, 3.5 days, but I had the generator on the RV up and running. It ran for 3 days and kept our refrigerator and gave us a light and some fans and things like that to get us through for that, which I'm grateful. But it was nuts. We drove around Tuesday to get gas for the generator and to pick up to find bagged ice. There was no bagged ice to be found within the city. We lucked out at one Casey's convenience store on the edge of the city who had just gotten a supply, and it was almost out, and we got our share. And we got our gas at a 7-Eleven, a Quick Trip that had brought in a big generator to power the store down by the fairgrounds, because everybody else was out. You couldn't get gas. It was crazy. Portions of the cities you could go blocks, and there'd be blocks that would work and have lights, and then there'd be whole neighborhoods that didn't. And it took them till Thursday morning to get most of the city. I think it was this past Saturday, last week, that the last customers in the city, the greater Des Moines area, finally got power back. But like I said, here we are almost 2 weeks from this storm, and there's Cedar Rapids and other big city, fairly sizable cities for Iowa in the eastern side of the state that are still suffering significant power outages. So here's my last clip. Over on the side, there's 3 or 4 on the southbound side. Maybe you can see the traffic's hammered over that side now. Backed up for miles because there's only one lane open back there. They got wreckers all over the place, rolling people over, getting them out of the ditch. Just that 70 to 100 mile an hour winds that came through. I passed a couple buildings north of Ankeny. It looked like the side was caved in on one of them. There's 3 branches broke all over the place out there. Nothing on the highway, but I saw one trees on their roofs. One of them's got a hole punch through it because he's got a turn up there now. Neighbor to the shop where the truck parks, and I got mentioned that earlier. And one of the big trees that was right under where we parked the trucks and stuff, stand and broke off. It was rotting out the core. Bunch of debris there on the left side, bunch of trees down over there on the left side. I see some stuff earlier. One of these mobile signs that they put on the interstate. I looked at it. They took a metal, or it's like a big plastic pipe, rolled onto somebody's property over there. Bunch of these signs and stuff. like I said, if I had turned that thing on just as I left town, and you'd have seen a dozen different vehicles flip, the trucks flipped over, and what you couldn't see off to the sides was that there was trailers parked up in parking lots and they'd been flipped over, and there was a couple of buildings that showed some significant damage. And like I said, there are areas that got hit pretty bad, especially further east you went. We were very lucky and grateful. But anyway, this is my part of the 2020's Derecho storm in central Iowa. Till next time, this is Rick. Stay safe.